Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. As you can tell, I am, just like many of you out there, losing my hair. And in today's video, I'm going to be opening up about losing hair as an Asian guy in my 20s. You might be wondering why exactly I am starting a whole new channel with this as the first video, and I totally understand that. I'll be splitting this video into three main parts. First, why I am talking about this. Second, what I have actually tried to do about this and my own experience going through this whole process over the past 4 years. And finally, what I am going to do moving forward and why I have chosen to do that. So first, let's have a bit of a chat about why I am even talking about this kind of thing. And the first reason that I'm going to be talking about this is going to be the fact that there's been quite a lot of cultural silence around male appearance. People don't really like to talk about it. In addition to that, in Asia, this really isn't such a focus. Conventionally, we don't have the option of going the bald route like our friends in the West, simply because it isn't as commonly accepted and aesthetic over here. In fact, if you live in my native Singapore, there are even negative connotations associated with it. Associations with people who are, let's just say, not the highest on the social status totem pole. That's right, I'm talking about the army recruits, which even if you don't buy into the whole high value man stuff and all of that manosphere nonsense, in the military, they are still the lowest rank on the totem pole, whichever way you cut it. So there's a lot of stigma, first of all, not only around the actual act of having this issue or having this condition, there's also the added stigma around not being able to talk about it much without fear of being judged. That is the reason why I am actually starting out this channel, not only as a journal for myself, but also to hopefully give people out there who might be going through the same thing some hope that, not all is lost. You see, I know that there are many Asian men out there who are going through the same thing and, hiding in silence and possibly even shame. And as someone with first-hand experience of all of this, I can vouch that this really takes a toll on things where confidence matters most, such as dating as well as in your career. To prove my point about the fact that, this is not just an isolated issue and that there are many people going through the same thing that would benefit from this kind of content, I actually go to Bangkok quite often. Whenever I go there and post some Instagram stories of being in that city, my friend actually relays a message from multiple friends of his asking me to refer them to a pharmacy where they might get it so that they themselves might be able to acquire that on their next trip. Therein lies the understanding that there's a silent epidemic that isn't really being addressed by content creators in this space. Now we move on to the second part of the video where we're going to be talking a bit about what I have actually done to try to address this condition. And that will actually nicely segue into my third point. Now you may think that going straight for the bald look is a bit fatalistic, just shave it all off. And you see that a lot in forums such as Reddit, and for some it may be scary, especially if you are in Asia for all the reasons that I have described earlier. So in terms of what I've actually tried to address this whole situation, there's several key well understood methods that one can go about it. The first is of course going to be the meds route, and that includes taking things like finasteride and dutasteride. These are what we know as 5-alpha reductase inhibitors. Now that's a lot of mumbo jumbo to just say that these are drugs that effectively block testosterone from being converted into dihydrotestosterone or DHT, which then causes hair loss. And in theory, it should stop whatever that's going on in your scalp, right? I was able to tolerate that well. However, the results were not as good as I thought. So some people respond better to it, and of course, some people may not even respond to it. A lot of the time, doctors will tell you that, just keeping your current level of hair is already considered a successful outcome of that drug. Not so encouraging for people who are trying to improve their lot. I also tried minoxidil, so that's the one that you spray onto your hair. So supposedly it dilates the blood vessels that supply blood to your hair follicles, increasing blood flow and in theory boosting the vitality of these follicles over time to grow out terminal hair. Now I've tried this for a while as well, got some results earlier on. Hairs started to grow out thicker, but they didn't really quite solve the entire problem. So it was clear that I had a more aggressive condition on my hands. The third thing that I did was more of an aesthetic approach, which was to make use of this thing called Topic. Now Topic is a hair fiber, which is basically some sort of powder that people can sprinkle on their head like using a salt shaker. This powder then covers up all of the thinning spots, so it makes it look like you have a full head of hair. However, this came with its own set of problems. For example, when I used Topic, I was more conscious of either getting stuck in the rain or playing sports, especially as once you started sweating, it was possible that the powder would start to wash off or start to look uneven, therefore giving a look that not only are you losing your hair, you are trying another solution to cover that up, which I guess makes one even worse look. And that actually all came to a head, pun intended, on things like dates, where sometimes you find yourself getting a bit anxious about, perhaps standing in front of a girl on the down riding escalator, because then everything will be available to see. And knowing that this did not fit into the Asian standard of attractiveness, that definitely weighed on me quite a bit. So that actually brings me nicely on to my third point, which is going to be what am I going to be doing moving forward? And what I'm going to be doing moving forward is actually to try out the bald look. So that is what I'm going to be playing around with on this channel. I'm going to be documenting styling tips on this channel, for example, as well as going through some reflections and learnings from the whole experience. After that, I'm also looking to try out some social experiments using the new look to hopefully create some content that will empower those who are also going through a similar condition to, reconsider the notion that this is really such a big problem at all, and in so doing empower them to make their own choice and own their own identity without having to try to cover something up and suffer from that toxic shame any longer. At the end of the day, I realized that opting for things like hair transplants, which was even advised by the doc, may not be as successful over time or might require multiple rounds of surgery, is really just getting at the top level problem. The problem is not so much that you're losing your hair or very well that you have some genetic condition that causes you to look a certain way. Rather, the root problem that is really affecting your day-to-day well-being is the confidence loss that you're incurring on a daily basis. And of course, I understand that, if you get rejected over time, let's say if you're going on dates and stuff, and if you go to school or work and people are taking jabs at your appearance, then yeah, that negative feedback loop can further worsen the situation. That is exactly what I aim to help you guys work through on this channel. And if you want to see more such content as I go through this journey myself and document the process, then do stay tuned to the channel and hit the subscribe button. So that's all from me for now. If you found this video informative and interesting, do consider leaving a like. And with all that being said, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.